The silly season for IndyCar next season started a bit earlier than normal. In this video, I will be describing my thoughts on where I think various drivers will be going and also various changes to teams. I will be basing this on my own speculation of other people, and also official announcements. Team Penske will remain mostly the same from this season, with one notable exception. Helio Castroneves will not be back next season as a full-time driver. I believe, and I fully expect, that he will become one of Penske's IMSA drivers for next season. However, I do believe also, from what I've been reading and also what Helio Castroneves himself has been saying, that he will at least do Indianapolis next year. Whether or not that's just the 500 or both the 500 and the Grand Prix, I do not know. Also, I would fully expect Pablo Montoya to be back next year, as he still is employed with the team in their IMSA program also, again, as a one-off for Indianapolis, like whether or not it's the 500 and the Grand Prix or just the 500, we'll see, I suppose. So for 2018, I believe that Team Penske's drivers will be for the full season Joseph Newgarden, Simon Pagenaud, and Will Power. It's the same three of the current four who still are full-time. And then, as I said, part-time cars will be driven by Castroneves and Montoya. AJ Foyt Enterprises, I believe, will keep half of its driver lineup from this past season for next year. I believe that Connor Daly will be the one between him and Carlos Munoz, who will still be driving for Foyt next year. And while I think both Daly and Munoz have had good relationships with the team, I just think that Munoz will be going someplace else next year, and I'll talk more about him later on in this video. Now, as for who will be driving the 14 car next year, well, I think based on what I've been reading and hearing, I think it'll be Tony Kanaan. I say that because at this point, NTT Data, who had already been his sponsor at Ganassi, has been gradually moving more and more to Dixon, while at the moment they currently are essentially a race-to-race basis with Dixon. They, I believe, will become the full sponsor for him and cut back to just one car for 2018. Admittingly, Kanaan does not have too much in the way of personal backing that could just fund a car, and while he does have personal sponsors with him, again, I just don't think that they're enough to fund the team. However, the Foyt team does have a sponsor with ABC Supply Company that fully funds 2 cars, and I also think that with the changes that Foyt's made in terms of his crew, such as the crew chief change on the 14 car, I think having a person such as Kanaan would definitely be a plus. And admittingly, I could honestly see this as being the place that Kanaan retires at. So for 2018, I would have to say that the Foyt drivers will be Connor Daly and Tony Kanaan for the full season, and I could see them running a third car at Indianapolis. I honestly don't know who it would be at this point, but I think based on their past history, it's a pretty reasonable assumption. At Schmidt Peterson Motorsports next year, I believe that Aero Electronics will move up to sponsor both cars for the entire season. I fully expect James Hinchcliffe to return, as he also has support from Honda Canada, in addition to having some reasonable success with the Schmidt team these past few seasons. Additionally, the second car, I believe, will be driven by Santiago Urrutia, who currently in Indy Lights is sponsored by Aero and has had a previous relationship with Schmidt, driving for them in 2016 in Indy Lights. Also, Urrutia has said that he does have a partial budget for next year, and based on Schmidt's history, he does like having funded drivers, or drivers who can at least bring some funding. So the drivers for Schmidt Peterson Motorsports next season, I believe, will be James Hinchcliffe in the primary number 5 car, and then in the second car, as I said, Urrutia. Now again, I think it would be pretty reasonable to assume that Schmidt would run a third car. Again, based on their driver choices over the past few years, they like a driver who has funding, and I believe that that'll be the case this year. Additionally, Mariotti Racing, who has signed on to essentially fund the 7 car for 3 races in 2017, and also was the entrant and co-sponsor of Oriol Servia's 2016 entry for the Schmidt team. I think could be a reasonable backer for this third car. In terms of driver change for teams next year, I think Chip Ganassi Racing might be the team where we see the most of it. Of their current 4 cars, I believe only one driver will be back next year, that being Scott Dixon. I also believe that Dixon next season will be completely funded by NTT Data, having them as the full sponsor for the entire year, much like Coyne has had the previous year, and Dixon's sponsorship with NTT this year basically being that of a race-to-race basis. Now then for the other cars, I think that Ganassi will also go down from 4 to 3 cars full time, and also frankly I think that the other 2 drivers will be drivers who have some degree of funding. I think Felix Rosenquist, who has had some praise said of him by Mike Cole, who Ganassi definitely trusts. I think Rosenquist will end up being one of the drivers in a second car for Ganassi. Now then, the third car, I fully believe, will be somebody who is completely funded. Now, there's 2 drivers who I think could end up in this car based on this. Carlos Munoz, who I admit has not brought a whole lot of funding to teams in the past. I think next year he will not be with Foyt, as I mentioned earlier, and I also think that courtesy of some funding from Colombian businesses, and also his family business, namely Pint Pharma, who was an occasional sponsor for the car last year, his car at Andretti last year, that is. I think that he will, try to turn this funding into a better team to drive for. However, I think there's also another option for Ganassi, that being Sebastian Saavedra, who has had a relationship with Ganassi in the past, driving for them part-time in 2015, and this year he returned, and not to mention he brings funding from AFS. So as for Ganassi's 2018 drivers, I would have to say Dixon, Rosenquist, and then between Munoz and Saavedra, I think Ganassi will take the likely larger amount of money and go with Saavedra. Now then, I also think that Ganassi will run a 4th car at Indianapolis, and not just for anybody, but I think it'll be Kyle Larson, who over the past year has definitely become one of the top drivers in the NASCAR Cup Series, and he has definitely expressed interest in doing the double. As a result, I think the time has come, and we'll be seeing him in Indianapolis next year, in an IndyCar that is, for 2018. Juncos Racing currently has a full-time Indy Lights effort, and they had 2 cars in the Indianapolis 500 this past year. Now, based on this, and also what team owner Ricardo Juncos has been saying, I fully expect them to have a full-time car in IndyCar in 2018. Now, as the driver, I think it'll be Kyle Kaiser, who is currently the Indy Lights points leader, and also regardless of if he actually wins a championship or not. Now, admittingly, it would definitely be to the benefit of the team for him to win the championship, obviously. I mean, since if he wins, he gets the $1 million scholarship. At Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing, I fully expect Graham Rahal to be back, not just because he's one of the owner's son, but also because he has had a fair amount of success. I mean, he has won 2 races this year. And also, I think that they will have a second car next year. That'll be for one Takuma Sato, the Indianapolis 500 winner of this year. This is because Sato has to be in a Honda team, and the team he currently drives for, Andretti Autosport, I really doubt will be a Honda team next year, and more on that later. And I mean, Sato does have a prior relationship with the Rahal team. I mean, in 2012, he did almost win Indianapolis for them. So as far as their drivers go, you'll have Rahal and Sato as the full-time drivers, and then maybe at Indianapolis they'd run a 3rd car, but also maybe not, since 2013 was the last time that they had multiple cars for the full season. Now, I guess if they ran a 3rd car in Indianapolis, I think I would have to say it would probably be Oriol Servia, and I say that because, he's driven the Indianapolis car for them 3 of the past 4 years, the only exception being 2016. Coyne Racing, the team that has had both sides of the fortune hit them this year, I think will expand to 3 cars next year, as their primary driver will be Sebastian Bourdais, who is fully expected to recover from his injuries at Indianapolis and has already tested the team's cars and also is expected to be competing by the end of the season. Jones, I also expect, will be back. While it is true that he doesn't have much funding, and in fact, he definitely won't have the Indy Lights scholarship money that he had this past season, I think that Coyne has said that he does like Jones and he wants to have him back. Additionally, Honda did or say that Coyne needed to make a better effort to be competitive prior to last season. Hence, Bourdais and his engineers he had previously worked with being hired by Coyne this year. Now then, in the third car, I think will be Esteban Gutierrez, who has been Bourdais' primary replacement since his injury. And admittingly, since there is heavy talks of a Mexico race next year, I think he will definitely come with various money from Mexican companies, as he has at various races this year, but I think it will be increased with a Mexican race. Now, in addition to Bourdais, Jones, and Gutierrez, I think at Indianapolis I'm not entirely certain if they'll run a fourth car, and I say that because, well, the Coyne team has went through a fair amount of cars this year, and admittingly, it might be a bit harder for them to run a fourth car, but I suppose if they do at Indianapolis, it would be Pippa Mann. For 2018, at Carpenter Racing, it will be running 2 full-time cars, one for Spencer Pigot and the other for J.R. Hildebrand. Additionally, they will have a car fielded on ovals for Carpenter himself. Now, I say this because, well, that's what Carpenter has said he wants to do, and as a result, I think I have to go with that. There have been rumors of Dreyer and Reinbold Racing coming back to IndyCar competition full-time in 2018. However, I do not believe that'll be the case. I think that they'll just do the Indianapolis 500 again, as they have since 2014. And I think as the driver, I mean, at this point, it's just purely speculation on my part, but I think it'll be Sage Karam, since, I mean, he has driven the car 3 of the past 4 years. Andretti Autosport will be the only full-time team changing manufacturers next year, going from Honda to Chevrolet. Now then, as for their drivers, Ryan Hunter-Reay and Marco Andretti are definitely staying with the team. Alexander Rossi, I do fully expect to stay with them. Now there have been some claims that Honda likes Rossi so much that they would put him in a different Honda team. I don't think that'll be the case. I mean, it kind of sounds like what happened when there was rumors that Simon Pagenaud would not be coming back with Schmidt after the 2014 season. People were saying, well, he wouldn't leave Schmidt because Honda really likes him so much. Well, he went to Team Penske, and he's driven Chevrolets ever since. Now, as for their fourth car, since Takuma Sato only drives for Honda because, well, he comes with a free engine and also partial sponsorship for teams. As I mentioned earlier, he'll likely drive for Rahal. As for the fourth car, I mean, there have been rumors that Fernando Alonso might leave Formula One to drive an IndyCar. I don't think that'll be the case. Now, as for who I do think will be driving the car, well, I guess I would have to say I believe Carlos Munoz will be returning to Andretti for 2018. Now, I think that he'll try to get some more funding, especially from companies based in his native country of Colombia, in addition to his family connections to Pint Pharma, who was a sponsor of the 2016 car. Now, in regards to Alonso, if he is having another bad year in Formula One next season, well, I could see him skipping Monaco again to drive in Indianapolis, again with the cooperation of McLaren, even if they have separate engine manufacturers next year. Lazier Partners Racing, I do expect to be back next year with Buddy Lazier once again driving in Indianapolis. And also, it is true that Lazier is trying to help along the development of his son Flynn, and perhaps someday Lazier's team might even compete full-time. Now, I'm not saying 2018 or even 2019 at this point, but it's something I think you could see down the road within even the next few years, I guess. I guess time will tell. Michael Shank Racing, who last year fielded a car in conjunction with Andretti Autosport at the Indianapolis 500, has been rumored to come back to the series full-time in 2018. While I most definitely am not saying this is impossible, at the same time I'm not expecting it to come true in all honesty. Now, if it does, I think a driver who I could see being chosen to drive could be Catherine Lake, and I say that because, well, she does have past IndyCar experience, and also she she currently drives for the Shank team in IMSA. Harding Racing, the new team that has competed this year at Indianapolis, Texas, and Pocono, has already said that they will be back full-time next year with driver Gabby Chavez. I have no reason to doubt that, and I fully expect it to come true. I believe that Carlin Motorsport, who currently competes full-time in Indy Lights and has been rumored to compete in IndyCar for the past several years now, will in fact join IndyCar full-time next year. As the two drivers, I believe it'll be Max Chilton, who admittingly does have family connections to the team, and also Charlie Kimball. Now for Kimball, the reason why I say that is because, well, he does have prior experience racing for Carlin, and also he does bring funding in the form of Novo Nordisk. However, the funding he has been reduced for this upcoming season, and, well, probably not enough for Ganassi. No, it's also not to mention the fact that he does bring a fair amount of experience with him, which could definitely help a new team. So we'll see how many of these predictions and thoughts come to be. I think a fair amount of them will happen, but I wouldn't be shocked if one or two of them admittingly didn't happen. So thank you.